Dear friends, English Literature. Introduction to Drama, Arms of the Man by George Bernard Shaw. Short questions with answers. Short questions 23 to 32. Question 23. How does the play Arms of the Man open? Answer. Arms of the Man opens in an atmosphere of military melodrama. Raina is in a romantic mood on the balcony in front of her bedroom. Catherine, her mother, informs her of Sergius' victory at the Battle of Slivnica. They become exceedingly happy at the news of Sergius' victory because he is engaged to Raina. He led the cavalry charge against a battery of machine guns at his own responsibility, violating the rules of military science. He was the first man to sweep through the guns of the Servians. Catherine describes the cavalry charge in her romantic light that the brave Bulgarians, with their swords and eyes flashing, rushed down upon the enemies like an avalanche and scattered the helpless Servians and their Austrian officers like chaff before the wind. Hearing the story of Sergius' cavalry charge, Raina feels that her heroic ideas about Sergius have been proved true. She is so happy that the world appears to her as a glorious place for women who can see its glory and for men who can perform the deeds of heroism to glorify themselves. She worships his portrait like a priestess and addresses it as the hero of her soul. Thus, Catherine and Raina create the atmosphere of military melodrama. Question 24. Describe the dramatic significance of the first act of the play. Answer. The first act of Arms of the Man is dramatically very important. At the very beginning of the first act, Shaw has created an atmosphere of military melodrama through the remarks and utterances of Catherine and Raina about the cavalry charge of Sergius. But Bluntschli, the Swiss officer, changes the atmosphere by telling Raina the romanticality, the foolishness of Sergius in leading the cavalry charge against a battery of machine guns. He also tells her what is true about war and soldiering. Raina is a romantic girl who has romantic illusion about war, but Bluntschli is a practical man. He is a realist. From their respective outlook on life and war arises the conflict between them, and in this conflict lies the keynote of the play. The first act serves as an exposition. It introduces all the characters of the play except the manservant Nicola. It introduces the hero Bluntschli and the heroine Raina. Catherine and Loka, the maidservant Bluntschli, Raina, Catherine, and Loka take part in the action of the first act. Though Sergius and Petkov do not take part in the action of the first act, they are introduced to us through the conversation. Thus, the first act is dramatically very important. Question 25. What do you know about the cavalry charge led by Sergius? Answer. A cavalry charge is an attack made by horse soldiers. Sergius was a Bulgarian major. A regiment was under his control. Bulgaria was in war with Serbia. At the Battle of Slivnica, Sergius led the cavalry charge against a battery of machine guns at his own responsibility, thus dissolving the command of the Russian officers. The cavalry soldiers are to fight with their swords remaining on horseback, but the artillery forces use machine guns in the battlefield. So it is not wise for the cavalry soldiers to attack the artillery forces. Sergius had a romantic illusion about war. He foolishly attacks the artillery forces without imagining the result of the attack. It is good luck for him that the Servians had no right ammunitions. When the cavalry charges attacks them, their machine guns suddenly stop functioning. If their machine guns function properly, all the cavalry charges will be killed in a moment. As their guns do not function properly, they are defeated. Sergius wins the battle. though foolishly. Question 26. What are Catherine and Raina's reactions to it? Answer. Catherine and Raina are exceedingly happy at the news of Sergius' victory at the Battle of Slivnica. Catherine's emotion and excitement go on swelling, and she describes the story of Sergius' cavalry charge at the Battle of Slivnica. She tells Raina that Sergius is the hero of the cavalry charge, and he becomes the object of worship of the whole Bulgarian army by winning the battle. She describes it as a splendid thing. She describes the cavalry charge led by Sergius in her romantic light, that the brave Bulgarians, with their swords and eyes flashing, rushed down upon their enemies like an avalanche, and scattered the helpless Serbians and the Austrian officers like chaff before the wind. Raina is overwhelmed with an excess of joy. She becomes anxious to know the details of the war. Finding no proper way to express her feelings of joy, she utters, "Oh, mother, mother, mother." She is very happy and proud that Sergius has won such glory. She feels that her heroic ideas about Sergius have been proved true. She is so happy that the world appears to her as a glorious place for women who can see its glory, and for men who can perform the deeds of heroism to glorify themselves. She worships his portrait like a priestess and addresses it as the hero of her soul. Thus, Raina and her mother become wild in joy and excitement at the news of Sergius' victory at the Battle of Slivnica. Question 27. Describe the bedroom episode. Answer. Being defeated at the Battle of Slivnica, Bluntschli, a Swiss officer, fled from the battlefield. While crossing the streets at night, he climbs the water pipe to reach Raina's balcony and enters her bedroom to save his life from the hands of the Bulgarian soldiers. He threatens her that if she shouts, he will shoot her, and assures her that if he does not shout, he will do not harm to her. At the time Raina was in her nightdress, he snatches her cloak from the ottoman so that she may not allow anybody to come in her bedroom. But when the Bulgarians knock the door and want to break it to enter the room, he gives Raina her cloak so that she may appear before the soldiers in proper dress. She assures him to save his life. She hides him behind the curtain. When the Russian officer enters to search the room, she stands with her back to the curtain where he is hidden. The Russian officer fails to discover him and leaves the room politely. Bluntschli then comes out of hiding and expresses his gratitude to her. He feels hungry. She gives him chocolates. He tells her what is true about war and soldiering, about Sergius' unprofessional cavalry charge. He falls asleep. He's given the old coat of Petkov to leave the house in disguise. While the coat is given to him, Raina put her photo in the pocket of the coat with inscription "Raina" to her chocolate cream soldier, a souvenir. Question 28. What is the significance of the episode? Answer. The bedroom episode is very significant because it informs the foundation of the action of the play. Number one, this episode creates a comic irony because we see later in the play that Petkov and Sergius come to know from one of Bluntschli's friends that a Bulgarian lady has given him shelter in her bedroom at midnight. But they do not know that the very Bulgarian lady is Raina herself. Number two, the coat given to Bluntschli produces amusement and helps the plot to move further. Bluntschli comes back to the house to return the coat. It helps him to meet with Raina again. Petkov does not find the coat in blue closet. When he's given the code, he notices Raina's photograph in his pocket. He discloses inscription on the photo and declares that Sergius may be the chocolate cream soldier, not knowing that her daughter is drawn to Bluntschli. Question number 3. This episode makes Raina realize that all her romantic ideas about war and heroism are mere illusions. Bluntschli cures her illusions and draws her to him. And number 4, the episode helps Loka to fulfill her ambition to marrying a man above her station. In this episode, she becomes sure of someone's presence in Raina's bedroom at midnight, seeing a pistol on the tavern. Later in the play, she utilizes this knowledge to entrap Sergius. Thus, this episode is very important for the development of characters and action of the play. Question 29. What is Raina's view on killing the fugitives? Answer. Raina, daughter of Catherine, is the heroine of the play Answer the Man. She is polite and gentle in her manners. She is also soft-hearted. From the maid-servant Loka, she comes to know that the Bulgarians are chasing the Serbians and they are ready to kill the fleeing Serbians as soon as they appear in the streets. Raina is not happy at the killing attitude of the Bulgarians. She feels sympathy for the unfortunate Serbian soldiers who feel compelled to run away from the battlefield to save their lives. According to Raina, the poor helpless Serbian fugitives who are running away for lives should not be killed. The Bulgarians should not be so cruel as to chase the fleeing Serbians and kill them. She finds nothing heroic or glorious in killing the unfortunate fugitives. Thus, Raina is a kind-hearted girl. She feels for the wretched fugitives and does not want them to be killed. Question 30. How is Catherine's view in this regard different from that of Raina? Answer. But Catherine's mother, Raina's mother, is totally different from Raina in her attitude to killing the fugitives. She does not agree with Raina. She is in favor of killing the fugitives. The Serbians were defeated in the Battle of Slivnica. Being defeated, they are forced to flee from the battle, from the battlefield to avoid death. Catherine does not realize their deplorable condition. There is no feelings for sympathy for the unfortunate soldiers in her heart. She thinks there is nothing wrong in the act of killing the Serbians. She argues that if the Serbs would get a similar position, they would not hesitate to kill the Bulgarians. She goes on to say that their enemy soldiers would have done something worse in such a situation. So she supports the killing of Serbs. She is a cruel woman who has no kindly feeling for the helpless enemy. Question 31. What particular night is the happiest night for Raina? Why? Answer. Raina, the heroine of Answer the Man, appears as aromatic and sentimental girl at the beginning of the play. She has romantic notions about love and heroism. At midnight, she was on the balcony and enjoying the romantic beauty of the starlit night. She lost herself in the thought of the romantic beauty of the night and her own youth and beauty. Her mind is filled with excessive joy when her mother informs her that Sergius, lover of Raina, has won the Battle of Slivnica and become the object of worship of the whole Bulgarian army. Raina is overwhelmed with an excess of joy, and she is very happy and proud that Sergius has won such a glory. She feels that her heroic ideas about him, Sergius, have been proved true. She's so happy that the world now appears to her as a glorious place for all men who can see its glory and for men who can perform the deeds of heroism to glorify themselves. Raina worships the portrait of Sergius like a priestess and addresses it as the hero of her soul. She is very much elated that night to think of the glory that her lover has brought upon himself as well as on her. So she considers that particular night the happiest night of her life if there are no fugitives. Question 32. How is that night actually proved to be the happiest night in her life later on? Answer. But it is an example of dramatic irony. Raina considers that particular night as the happiest night of her life because of the glory Sergius has brought upon them. Her happiness is clouded with the fear of any fugitives that might enter her room. Actually, fugitive Bluntschli intruded her room that night and turned the whole course of her life. Bluntschli told her that the Bulgarians will kill him if they found him. He took away her cloak so that she might not allow anybody to come in her room as she was in her nightdress. But when the Bulgarians knocked at the door and wanted to break the door to enter the room, he gave Raina her cloak so that she might appear before the soldiers in proper dress. She helped him to save his life by hiding him behind the curtains. She gave him a chocolate as he was hungry. He was allowed to sleep in her bedroom for the whole night. He was given Petkov's old coat to leave the house in disguise. Thus, Raina is gradually drawn to Bluntschli, though she was betrothed to Sergius. Bluntschli is a practical-minded man. He cures of Raina's romantic illusions by telling her that what is true about life and war. He also informs her about the unprofessional cavalry charge of Sergius. Sergius also flirts with the maidservant Loka. So Raina becomes disillusioned and becomes happy when Sergius declares to marry Loka and Bluntschli proposes to marry her, and the proposal is accepted by her parents. Thus, that particular night is the happiest night in her life. Actually, not for Sergius's glory, but for her marriage with Bluntschli. Thank you, friends, for watching my video.